I was only 12 years old when this happened, and even now, many years later, I still cannot forget his face no matter how hard I try, because some memories don't fade with time. They wait silently in the dark. At that time, my father had gone out of town for an entire week due to work, which meant only my mother and I were home. And although she tried her best to act normal, I could sense the tension in the house because we were not used to being alone without him. We lived in what everyone considered a safe and peaceful neighborhood, a place where doors were rarely locked and children played outside until sunset, a place where nothing bad ever happened, or so we believed. It was a Thursday afternoon when school ended, and I climbed onto my bicycle to head home under the burning sun. The sky was clear, the air felt heavy, and the streets were unusually empty, as if the whole neighborhood had decided to disappear for the day. The heat was unbearable and sweat soaked through my school uniform until it clung tightly to my skin. My house was only 2 blocks away, but even that short distance felt endless. And while riding slowly, I noticed a small children's park beside the road, a place I had passed hundreds of times without ever thinking much about it. Inside the park, I saw an old water tap standing near a broken bench. And because my throat felt completely dry, I decided to stop. I pushed my bicycle inside the park, leaned it near a bush, and walked toward the tap. The water that came out was cold and refreshing, almost shockingly cold compared to the heat around me. I drank greedily and splashed some on my face and neck, feeling relief spread through my body. And for a brief moment, everything felt normal again. But as I turned around to go back to my bicycle, I felt something change in the air, a sudden heaviness, a silence so deep it felt unnatural. And that's when I saw him. A clown stepping out from the shade of a tree so suddenly that my heart nearly stopped beating. It felt as if he had appeared from nowhere, as if he had been standing there the entire time just waiting for me to notice him. I had never been afraid of clowns before and had even laughed at them in cartoons and birthday parties. But something about this one was deeply wrong, very wrong. He was tall, far too tall for a normal man, with a large, heavy body that didn't seem to move naturally. Wearing a faded blue and yellow coat that looked dirty and old, messy red fake hair sat crooked on his head, and his face was painted white in thick, uneven layers. His eyes were drawn unnaturally large, making them appear empty and lifeless. And across his face was a massive red smile that didn't look painted at all but carved, stretched wider than any human mouth should be able to go. He slowly showed his yellow, rotten teeth and began to laugh. A laugh that sounded dry and broken, as if it came from deep inside his chest. Then in a rough, cracking voice, he told me not to be scared and said he only wanted to talk. But my body had already frozen, my hands trembled, my legs felt numb, and no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't speak. He casually asked how my day was going, as if this was a normal conversation. And then he leaned slightly closer and whispered that he was always with me. That whenever I felt lonely or scared, all I had to do was look outside my window and remember his face. Fear crawled slowly up my spine because I knew this was not normal behavior. Not for anyone, and especially not toward a child. Every instinct in my body screamed for me to run back to my bicycle. But he was standing far too close, and I was terrified that even a small movement would cause him to grab me. I looked around the park, desperately hoping to see another person, a dog walker, a jogger, anyone, but the park was completely empty and silent. Realizing I might not get another chance, I forced a fake smile and thanked him for being kind. And the moment I did that, his entire expression changed. His eyes lit up and he looked happy, almost proud. He said children are always scared at first, but that fear disappears once friendship begins. He told me his name in a cheerful tone and started clapping his hands excitedly like a grown child who had just received a gift. And then he asked the question that changed everything, asking if I would come with him. The moment those words left his mouth, I knew that if I stayed even 1 second longer, something terrible would happen. And when he took a small step away from my bicycle, I ran. I sprinted toward it with all my strength, jumped on, and began pedaling as fast as I possibly could. Behind me, I heard him screaming in rage, accusing me of lying and breaking my promise of friendship. His voice echoed through the empty street as I rode faster than I ever had before. I didn't look back even once because I was certain that if I did I would lose control and fall. And I rode like my life depended on it because deep down I knew it truly did. When I finally reached my house, I rushed inside, locked the door, and hid in my room shaking uncontrollably. I didn't tell my mother what had happened even though I should have, because I convinced myself it was over, that I had escaped. But I was terribly wrong, because what happened later that night was far worse. At around 1 in the morning, loud knocking suddenly shook our front door so violently that it jolted me awake. My heart started racing as I heard my mother get out of bed and walk toward the door. A terrible feeling settled deep in my stomach as the knocking grew louder, angrier, desperate. She checked the security camera, and when she gasped, I knew something was terribly wrong. On the screen stood the same clown, standing right outside our house, but this time he was dragging a large white bag across the ground, a bag covered in dark red stains. He pulled it into our yard and slowly looked up into the camera as if he knew exactly where we were watching from. Then he shouted that my friend had arrived, and that this gift was only for me. He pressed his face close to the camera and screamed for my mother to ask her son, because I had promised him friendship. I felt my chest tighten so badly I thought I might pass out. My mother grabbed me, locked every door, and immediately called the police while the clown began banging violently on the door as if trying to force his way inside. The entire house echoed with every strike. And when my mother screamed that the police were on their way, he suddenly stopped, stood completely still for a few seconds, and then ran off into the darkness. We didn't open the door until the officers arrived. And when they checked the bag he had left behind, we were certain we were about to see something horrifying. But inside were only crushed red tomatoes, smeared everywhere. A final sick joke, because he never wanted to kill us. He wanted to terrify us, to remind me that he hadn't forgotten me. And after that night, we moved away from that house and that neighborhood forever. But even now, I still cannot look at clowns the same way. I avoid circuses, refuse to watch movies with them. And whenever I see a red balloon floating somewhere, my heart still stops, because somewhere out there, I know he might still be smiling, still watching, and still waiting for me to look out the window again.